What's up, Black Coffee fam? Welcome back to the channel. We're diving into a topic that's got me and probably all of you fired up. Biden's last-minute pardon spree. Now, we all saw the headlines, right? President Biden, in his final moments in office, decided to unleash a flurry of pardons, not just for his son, Hunter, but seemingly for half of his extended family and a few other controversial figures. We're talking about a move so bold, so audacious, that it screams of something else.
Here's the breaking news for you. Remember, people were upset that Joe Biden pardoned his son, Hunter Biden? Well, President Biden pardons his family on last day in office. Why is he doing that? Is it unprecedented? Yeah, it is unusual, but it's also because of the unprecedented, unusual administration that we have coming in, and he cannot trust his family in the hands of Donald Trump's Justice Department. What do you think about it? Let me know in the chat.
Did you accept your pardon, and would you advise your staff to accept theirs?
Well, I'm not even sure that's part of the process. I'm trying to connect up with a lawyer to figure out whether you accept or reject a pardon, because one interpretation I found from some cases is that a pardon is like an executive order or a legislative enactment. It's just public law, and so you don't have the choice whether or not to accept it or reject it. I know there's some contrary authority, so I'm going to try to figure that out and figure out, what to do. I have felt, as I've said for, many weeks about this now, that we are safe with the speech and debate clause, which protects us against both federal and state criminal prosecution as well as civil lawsuits. This gives us obviously an added fortification against any efforts by Trump and his administration to do what they've been talking about with Liz Cheney and with Benny Thompson, which is, they've been concocting this whole theory about how Liz Cheney somehow suborned perjury or interfered with the right to counsel, which is complete nonsense and has been refuted and debunked by the Democrats on the House Administration Committee. But they've obviously been trying to torture out some reason to try to prosecute people, and President Biden basically put it to bed.
So let's break this down, Black Coffee style. First off, the sheer scale of these pardons is mind-blowing. We're not just talking about Hunter, who has had his share of issues. We're talking about his siblings, their spouses, a whole crew. And let's not forget about figures like Dr. Fauci and General Milley. It's like Biden was running a get-out-of-jail-free card factory in the Oval Office. Why this is a problem? Admission of guilt. When you issue preemptive pardons to so many people that haven't been charged, it smells like an admission of guilt. If these individuals had nothing to hide, they wouldn't need a pardon, right? The logic is simple. It's like admitting that you know something shady was going on and you're trying to sweep it under the rug. It makes you wonder, what was he so desperate to hide? And hypocrisy alert.
In it, Weiss defends his probe that found that the president's son made millions of dollars off his last name and political connections, then failed to pay his fair share of taxes.
Peter Doocy joins us live from the White House with the latest. Hey, Peter.
And a look at recent history, we remember that the heart of President Biden's pardon of his son was that he accused the special counsel, David Weiss, of singling Hunter Biden out. Now David Weiss is saying that the president was wrong to say that. A quote from last night's report: other presidents have pardoned family members, but in doing so, none have taken the occasion as an opportunity to malign the public servants at the Department of Justice based solely on false accusations. The biggest problem the special counsel Weiss has with Hunter is that he didn't pay $1.4 million in taxes over a 5-year stretch. Weiss says those are not inconsequential tax violations, and that Mr. Biden made his money by using his last name and connections to secure lucrative business opportunities, such as a board seat at a Ukrainian industrial conglomerate, Burisma Holdings Limited, and a joint venture with individuals associated with a Chinese energy conglomerate. He negotiated and executed contracts and agreements that paid him millions of dollars for limited work. The Hunter legal team is pushing back. Late last night, they told us Mr. Weiss conveniently omits his proposal to resolve this investigation in 2023 with a pair of misdemeanors and a diverted gun charge recommended by career prosecutors. Mr. Weiss also fails to explain why he reneged on his own agreement, a reversal that came at the 11th hour in court as he and his office faced blistering attacks from Republicans and his then filing unprecedented charges for someone with no aggravated gun factors who had paid his taxes in full years before the charges were filed. President Biden came here to the White House almost 4 years to the day, promising to restore faith in institutions. Now this special counsel is saying that President Biden's actions have undermined faith in institutions. Back to you.
Remember how the media went wild about Trump potentially pardoning his family? They called it an abuse of power, an obstruction of justice. They were throwing around terms like dictator and above the law. But now that Biden's done it, crickets. The double standard is deafening. We are told that Biden himself previously criticized Trump for even considering preemptive pardons. But actions speak louder than words, undermining the justice system. The Department of Justice and Special Counsel Weiss have made it clear that they have serious concerns about Hunter Biden's dealings. Weiss's report details that Hunter made millions by using his name and political connections. Weiss believes that the president undermined faith in institutions by maligning the public servants at the Department of Justice, and that the claim that Hunter was being singled out was false. Now, by issuing these sweeping pardons, Biden is effectively sending a message that accountability doesn't matter and that certain people are above the law. The message it sends.
Some breaking news we want to share related to all this. President Biden pardoning his family members minutes before President-elect Trump is sworn in. I want to go to our senior legal correspondent, Laura Jarrett. Laura, walk us through it.
Yeah, Lester, a rare and sweeping pardon here from the president in just his final moments while he still occupies that office, pardoning all of his living siblings and their spouses, including James Biden, Sarah Biden, Valerie Owens Biden, his sister, her husband, John T. Owens, and his brother, Francis Biden. Now, Lester, none of these people have been charged with crimes, but he says he's doing this because there is partisan politics here, obviously referring to the president-elect who's set to take office just minutes from now, Lester. Again, he's saying he's doing this as a preemptive pardon, something we have seen, something sweeping but very rare, Lester.
And, Laura, none of this is reversible. The next president, Trump, can't reverse this.
No, he can't, Lester. These are binding. They have the force of law. Courts recognize them. But we should note it doesn't stop Congress from investigating, and they have pledged specifically to come after James Biden, Lester.
All right, Laura Jarrett, thanks very much. We'll talk more on that, but let's rejoin now.
What message is Biden sending to the American people? It's clear that Biden cares more about shielding his family from the consequences of their actions than upholding the principles of justice and fairness. It makes you wonder how much of the business dealings were influenced by his position in politics.
Have you ever heard of somebody getting a preemptive pardon who was innocent of all crime? Who's just an innocent person? Have you ever heard of that? Just somebody getting a blanket pardon and they're an innocent person?
But no, it's the president's own family. It's people that have been covering up for the president in addition to his own family.
Is there an innocent explanation for someone to seek preemptive pardons for family members? Would you do that if you knew you were innocent and just worried about outside forces?
The answer to that is going to be no. If you haven't done anything wrong, you sit there and go, what do you need a preemptive pardon for?
If he pardons people preemptively, he's essentially telling the public that these people have committed crimes. And we may not be aware of what they are, but the pardon is clear evidence that crimes have been committed.
I imagine if he decides to issue these preemptive pardons, it will be cast in a way that he is protecting his family and protecting their reputations from, villainous exterior forces that are against him.
First off, we should just take a deep breath and acknowledge the audacity of a president who's so clearly concerned about his own criminal culpability and that of his family members that pardons are a major obsession with him.
These sweeping pardons that President Biden, former President Biden now, is giving to his immediate family. Preemptive pardons for his brothers, Frank and Jimmy, to his sister Valerie, and then to, I think, a couple in-laws.
Their spouses, yeah.
And that, to a lot of people, this did not go through the regular pardon attorney, the pardon process. And Biden in 2020, when I interviewed him right after he'd been elected, had some very harsh things to say about the idea of Trump giving preemptive pardons to his family members. He said it would set a horrible precedent. Now, Trump didn't do it. Joe Biden did. And we can come back to that subject later in the day.
Now, I know some of you might say, well, maybe he's just protecting his family. But think about it for a second. Are these pardons truly about protecting them, or are they about protecting himself? Is he afraid that their alleged wrongdoings will make him look bad? I can't help but be suspicious of the timing. The fact that he did this in his final moments in office before Trump took over reeks of desperation.
That got a pardon today? Did they pardon Jack Smith? You know, did you know that Biden, while I was making my speech, pardoned his whole family? The brother, the whole deal was pardoned. Can you imagine that? While I was making my speech. Did everybody hear my speech? Did you like my speech? Thank you. I mean, the only thing wrong with it is I had a lot of tough things to say, and I have some great people that work for me. Sir, this is such a great speech. It's so unifying. Don't talk about Biden with his pardons of his family. We want a unified country. They said, don't talk about the J6 hostages that you're going to be releasing today.
And let's talk about these other pardons. Dr. Fauci is acting like he's some kind of victim, claiming baseless threats. But if you're innocent, why do you need a pardon? Why not let the legal process play out? Why not let the chips fall where they may? I'm not buying it. Now, here's where it gets really interesting. Some of you may have seen the reports that these pardons cannot be reversed, but don't be fooled. While these pardons protect from federal prosecution, it does not shield anyone from state charges. This means that attorneys general still have a pathway to investigating these individuals. This brings me hope that at least there's a chance of justice. This will be the move that holds these individuals accountable.
Not unprecedented, of course. I mean, we all remember President Ford pardoned former President Nixon. He'd not yet been charged. So there is precedent for it. But this is highly irregular. And I was thinking, I remember there were some Republicans who were urging then President Trump, before he left office, to preemptively pardon members of his own family and potentially even himself. And obviously, Trump declined to do that, at least his immediate family. He did pardon his
father-in-law, Charles Kushner, who is now in
but he had been
diplomatic
charged
role.
and convicted,
And he had actually served time.
Yeah.
He had actually gone through the legal process.
So, I mean, I think, the messages that sends and would these people have been prosecuted? I think, obviously, it's hard to imagine. And then, of course, this is only, they could be prosecuted for future crimes. But it goes to what you're saying, Nora. I mean, the numbers of pardons that we have seen from former now President Biden, I mean, we're talking, 4,000? Mm-hmm. And in his first term, President Trump, as he was leaving office, I think, pardoned about 238. So it's quite a dramatic increase here that Biden's done.
It's also interesting to me about Dr. Fauci, who now says he has to travel with security. He released a statement saying, let me be perfectly clear. I've committed no crime. There are no possible grounds for any allegations or threat of a criminal investigation or prosecution. But the fact is, the mere articulation of these baseless threats, the potential that they will be acted upon, create immeasurable, intolerable distress for me and my family. So he says, I acknowledge and appreciate the action that President Biden has taken today on my behalf.
And of course, action is not going to do anything about the threats,
yes,
right? And so that's an issue, I think, that is not unique to whether we're talking about General Milley, Fauci. That is a reality of public service, sadly. Whether you're a Republican or a Democrat, the threat levels that people are under right now are
actual physical threats.
But does it take away? I cover the Supreme Court. The justices, there are justices on the Supreme Court who at times have to wear bulletproof vests. I mean, think about that. So, that's again, the pardons don't help that.
But would the preemptive pardons of members of the Biden family, we're not talking about Hunter Biden right now, who has been accused and was convicted. Talking about other members.
Also pardoned.
Yes, he did also pardon him. But I mean these preemptive pardons for the other members of the Biden family and for General Milley and for Dr. Fauci. Does that preemptive pardon, though, in some ways say to members of Congress who wanted to hold these hearings and investigate, well, probably not worth it, or do they go ahead and have the hearings anyway?
I think the question is going to be, what are you going to see from some of these state attorneys generals? That's where I think you're going to see some of the real action. Because obviously the president can only pardon federal crimes. I mean, we've seen that with President Trump, right? I mean, he couldn't have gotten a pardon for his state convictions, state court convictions. So whatever you're talking about with Dr. Fauci and being pardoned for any potential federal crimes, there's still a real avenue there for a state attorney general to try to file suit.
I want to be clear. This isn't about politics. This is about right and wrong. It's about holding those in power accountable and not letting them use their position to shield themselves and their families from the consequences of their actions. If you're going to be in public service, you should be held to a higher standard. You are working for the American people, not for yourselves. So, what do you all think about this? Drop a comment below. Let me know if you're as fired up as I am. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel if you haven't already, and share this video with your people. We need to keep this conversation going and hold these folks accountable. Until next time, stay woke, stay informed, and keep it real.